All right, guys, I think we can go ahead and jump in here. Just want to welcome everybody to the call today. I'm so happy to join you for another session of Live with ByDesign. Today, I am joined by two of my very good friends and partners from Nuvei. We have Scott Fitzpatrick and Marlon Gilbert. Many of you have probably met them before. And for those of you who haven't, they are my counterpart at Nuvei. So we meet on a weekly basis. We collaborate ongoing, and we're really here to just make sure that mutual clients between ByDesign and Nuvei have the best experience possible. So I couldn't do it without them. They're here with us today. They're going to share some information from the Nuvei side while I share from the ByDesign side. So join me in welcoming them to the call. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, with that, I am going to dive in, and I'm going to start off the call today. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I dive in, I want to let you know about questions that you may have. As we go through the content, feel free to interrupt, speak up, raise your hand, yell my name, do whatever you have to do to get our attention. We want this to be as fruitful for you as possible. So if asking a question live is going to help you to better understand the content or get some questions answered, please don't hesitate to do that. I will have a couple of times that I pause and ask for questions as well, but you don't have to wait for that. You can interrupt me at any time. We also have a chat feature in Zoom here that Dan here at ByDesign is going to be monitoring for us. So if you have a question that you don't want to verbalize, you can throw it in the chat there, and Dan will do his best to provide the answer. So now I can dive in, and I'm going to start out with some payment processing basics. I always like to start with a foundation so that we can build upon that. And when it comes to payment processing, it's important to understand the flow of payments. And this is important because this is really going to set the stage for everything that we talk about today. So I apologize if this is review for some of you, but when it comes to payment processing here at ByDesign, or anywhere really, there's this flow or process of the payment to a completed order. So it starts with capturing the payment. Capturing the payment is going to be done in many places. It could be on an enrollment screen, on the shopping cart. It might be processing auto ship through the Freedom back office, or manually processing an order through Freedom. And for those party clients that are with us, there is also the ability for your reps to process payments through Revolution. But the important thing to know is no matter where those payments are being entered, there's a point at which that payment is keyed in, and then we want to tokenize that payment. Tokenization is so important for security, for recall. There's all these reasons why tokenization is important, but it's something that we want to be sure we're doing on every transaction that comes in. There are some clients that may be on the call with us today that we're currently migrating from a non-tokenized to a tokenized flow. So this is important for you to understand as well. If you're on a non-tokenized payment processor, this tokenization step is not occurring. And that's what we really want to inject. We want to make sure that any payments that are coming into our system are tokenized, and then those tokens can be stored in a gateway. So the gateway is going to be that third party or that partner who takes the tokens and stores them for you. They're going to store them so that they can be reused for auto ship. They can be presented to your customers in cart, and really just to, again, increase that security, making sure that what's being stored on any database is not actual payment information, but a token instead. So the gateway level is kind of that intermediate step, and that's where the tokens are stored. That's also where tokens can be recalled, but they're basically communicating between the payment capture and the actual processing. That's that gateway layer there in the middle. And then finally, from the gateway, you have the processor. And this is going to be where the payment is actually attempted and we get an approval or decline. So the processor can be a variety of banks or other payment processors. But the important thing to know here is the communication and the flow of that payment. So it starts with the customer or the rep entering the payment information. We tokenize it and store it on the gateway, and then the processor determines the approval or decline, and then they communicate that back to us. That's how we know if the order is confirmed and can move into a posted status, or if that payment is declined and we need to return them to that payment screen to try again. Okay, so that's the general flow of payment processing. Again, sorry if that's a review for everybody, but I like to kind of set that foundation. So now that we know the process of the payment flow, let's really talk about that tokenization. Tokenization is basically just taking card information and replacing it with a token, replacing it with basically a string of characters that represent what that payment information is. This is so that we don't store the payment information itself on the database. Instead, we're just storing that token or that string of letters. But that token is still unique to each individual payment method or payment ID. So for a customer who might have multiple payment methods in the system, they may have multiple tokens because each one is going to have a separate ID. You're going to have separate IDs for each customer, for each rep. The important thing to know is that each token is unique, and that's how we identify and map to the correcting payment method, to the correct payment information, rather. But why is tokenization important? Why are we pushing so hard to have that? Well, first and foremost, it's just for added security. It's more secure for you, for us, for your customers, and your reps. You may think that encrypted card data is sufficient, but even encrypted card data, should there be any kind of breach, can be accessed and leveraged by those that are attempting to breach that data. But a token really is useless without the mapping and knowing the ID that it's related to. So should a breach occur and somebody gets a token, there's not much they can do with that versus a breach involving encrypted payment methods. Not that we anticipate any kind of breach, but it's just an added layer of security. And it's so important, in fact, that there are mandates about tokenization and fees and fines that can come into play for any encrypted payment information that's being stored non-tokenized. So it's definitely something that is inevitable if you're not using tokenization. I strongly encourage you to start using it. If it's not something that we're mandating currently, it is something that you're going to have to do eventually. So added security is really the number one reason for tokenization. But there's also benefits to you and to your customers. Card recall in cart is expected. You know, when I'm shopping on any kind of e-commerce, whether it be Amazon or Walmart or Target, anybody that I may be shopping with, once I'm logged into my customer account, almost every single one of those is going to offer up my last payment or previously used payments because they know I'm more likely to continue and purchase if I don't have to go and get my card, if I don't have to go and get my payment method. Instead, it's already stored there. It's easy, it's safe and secure. And as a customer myself, I can tell you that I have stopped shopping because I had to get up and go get my card versus anybody that stores the tokens and I can just recall my last payment. It's quick and easy. I can do it right from my phone, no matter where I'm at. So having that card recall in the cart is an expectation of customers, and it's really something that's going to increase your completion or conversion rate and decrease the bounces that you have once they hit that payment screen. Scott, are you going to correct something or just add?
No, absolutely not. I just need to add 2 bits of information to how tokens can change the general flow of a transaction. So first and foremost, it does reduce friction. So when a token is utilized, there are less checks and balances that need to be done by the front-end processor because we see that recurring token indicator. So that means the processor knows, as well as the issuer, that this card has been run through the rigors of the general application process and the acceptance process. And so we know that this is authorized. So once we see the recurring indicator, there's less likelihood of getting false negatives. And the other thing is we can actually, once the token is in the vault, it can be updated. So anytime a card holder changes their card number or their address, we get a direct file in from Visa and MasterCard on a daily basis, and we can update the tokens in the vault, thereby reducing the need for you to contact merchants and get updates on a monthly basis, or letting them know that their card has failed and that they need to re-enter their information. We can do that on the back end. So you keep calling the exact same number, but the number that represents, the card information that represents, has changed in the background.
Awesome. So just to clarify, Scott, does that also include like when my expiration retires and I get a new card from my same bank? Is that a situation where an update would automatically occur and I don't need to, as a customer, I wouldn't need to necessarily provide new payment information?
Absolutely correct. So it's two cases. It's for change of address and for a card that has expired. If it's a lost, stolen, or compromised card, then you need to re-enter the information. But if it's those two incidents, then, and which is 33% of your cards per year, will have to go through that process. So it greatly reduces the amount of touches that you have to keep your auto ships flowing.
Perfect. Perfect. Love that. Anything we can do to prevent customers from dropping off, right? Especially with those auto ships, whatever we can do to continue those recurring subscription orders is going to benefit us all. All right. Bart, I see your question in the chat here. He's asking about the commission payout option, and that's actually not something that we were planning on covering on this call today, but we could talk about that at the very end. We'll make some time for that, okay?
No problem.
All right. Going on. So now that we understand tokenization and the order flow, I want to start talking about the specific areas of ByDesign that you may be capturing payments. And what I really want to dig in here is the flexibility of the system. And that's really, what we pride ourselves on here at ByDesign is the flexibility to allow you to set up the rules and the flows that make sense for your business model. Okay, so for example, when you're looking at enrollment, so this is when new reps are joining the business, enrolling as a rep. There are options here. You can use our enrollment form with our checkout page, or you can use a custom enrollment form plus our checkout page. So have them fill out everything on your custom page and then just drop them at our checkout when they're ready to purchase and make that payment. You can also use custom enrollment with an API and just deliver to us the completed order and the new rep ID. So no matter what you choose, whether you have your own custom enrollment form, whether you want to use ours, any of these combinations, you're eligible to use Nuvei tokenized payments. Okay, so it's going to be secure. It's going to, everything that I talked about, the beauty of that tokenization is possible on enrollment. And because we can also use Checkout 2.0 on our enrollment now, you can also leverage any of those APMs, so alternative payment methods. We're going to talk about those in detail here in a little bit, but what this basically means is if you have chosen to use APMs through your Nuvei integration, like Google Pay, Apple Pay, PayPal, SEPA, any of these types of things, you can offer those payment methods on enrollment as well, not just in your cart. Okay, and that's true whether you're using Checkout 2.0 or whether you're using APIs. Obviously, with the API integration, it's a little different. The 2.0 is more of an out-of-the-box solution. But the key that I want to make here is that regardless of your setup, there are ways to make sure that you're meeting customer expectations, offering those alternative payment methods, and tokenizing that payment from enrollment. Because when you tokenize it at enrollment, every future order, every future auto ship, everything is already going to have a token ready and available because it was captured at enrollment. Okay, now everything I said for enrollment is true for cart. You can leverage the tokenized payments on ByDesign checkout, either our 1.5 or 2.0. You can use a custom cart and land on our checkout page. So if you want them to browse on your WordPress site or on a custom cart, fill up their cart, and then come to us to check out, you can do that. You can also do the whole thing outside of our cart and just send us the order at the end. But again, regardless of which one of these methods you choose, you've got tokenized payments available through Nuvei. Now, one thing I do want to clarify here on the cart is that the APMs are only available on 2.0 at this point. If you are on 1.0 or 1.5 version of our checkout, you're not going to have access to the APMs. But in almost every case, we can just move you up to the 2.0 so that you can use those APMs. And of course, there's additional feature benefits there as well. Moving on to Freedom. Freedom, you're going to have auto ship and simple order, individual orders that you might be keying from your back office or editing from your back office. In both cases, the Nuvei tokenized integration is available out of the box. And there is something that I wanted to highlight here, and it's a $0 pre-auth. And this is specifically for auto ship. So if you have an order that is coming through and it is initiating an auto ship, but that auto ship is not being charged and delivered now. So let's say maybe they're setting it up, but their first order for that auto ship isn't going to be until next month or next quarter. We can actually run a $0 pre-auth. And this goes back to what Scott said in the beginning. Once we know that that payment method has been authorized, then when we go to actually run the auto ship down the road, it's already authorized and we don't have to do that step as a new step at that point. So this is a really great way, again, to capture it up front, make sure that you've got a card that can be recalled and used for those subscription orders, and then you're all set for every monthly or quarterly or annual subscription moving forward. And then the final one I want to talk about is for those party clients that might be on the call. We do have a payment page within Revolution for the party module. And right now that is only going to integrate with the credit card processing. So that is the one place that we do not have the APMs, but that's really by design. I mean, if you think about it, you know, your rep that may be entering payments for a customer could enter a credit card information, but we're not going to have them enter PayPal information on behalf of a customer, right? That just doesn't make sense. Longer term, we're actually going to be moving the party payment methods over to the cart instead of Revolution. So that's why we're not spending resources and investing in expanding the party payment. Instead, we know that that will eventually move to cart, where you will have all of the options available there that you see above. Before I move on, I know this was a lot of information. Any question about the various areas of payment capture, what's possible? Any questions so far? All right, well, let's move on then. All right. So now that we understand the basics, it's time to get into the Nuvei solution and really recommendations. And while it's absolutely possible to have a gateway that is separate from your processor, I know a lot of clients have that scenario right now. What we recommend is really having a single gateway and processor. Nuvei is our partner, so of course we think they're great, and we recommend that you use their services. But by having a single gateway and processor, you're going to save money. You're going to have one less third party to have to intermix into any UBs you might have, any clarifications. The launch process is much easier because it's only one third party with ByDesign. So there's a lot of reasons from the ByDesign side that it makes sense to go with a single solution and a payment platform rather than seeking a gateway and seeking a processor separately. But I would love to turn it over to Scott and Marlon so that they can talk a little bit about their payment solution that is offered. And guys, if you want to just let me know when you want me to move slides, I can do that.
Great. Thanks, Cassie. Maybe if you could move
Yep.
to the next slide, please. So this is a chance for us to just introduce Nuvei for those of you who are not familiar with the company, and also just reinforce elements of our global value proposition. We're headquartered in Montreal. We have operations throughout the world. And it's very exciting, I think, for direct selling merchants that have global footprint or global aspirations to know that they can work with a payment processing partner who has scale and access and presence around the world. So we work with many direct selling merchants, but we also work across a range of other verticals, whether it's travel, e-commerce, gaming, and so forth. So what we can do is leverage our engagement with merchants globally to provide you more value in terms of the needs you have as a direct selling merchant. So, our revenue is over $1 billion. We've been a public company on NASDAQ and the Toronto Stock Exchange. We're actually executing a high quality private equity transaction with Advent, which is one of the world's leading private equity firms, later in 2024, early 25. And we're really making investments in our capabilities in terms of support engineering, product development to really deliver value for our merchants. We have relationships with the key banks, the key card schemes, the kinds of components that are needed to really succeed, both for pay-ins and payouts. And later in the presentation, as Bart requested, we'll run into more detail on our payout capabilities. Scott, did you have anything else to add in terms of this slide?
Yeah, I'll touch on that in a couple of slides from now, but the keynote here is that a lot of the regions that you see in front of you were not there a long time ago, and they're there now, and it's very customer driven. So our customer base really helps us drive our growth initiatives, and it's by listening to where our customers need to be, want to be, that really allow us to formulate our roadmap according to their needs. And the second piece with this global reach and the amount of transactions we do, because it might not mean anything, or you might not think it means anything to you on an individual level, but really by having that amount of transactions, it lets us store the data of those cards, which helps us enrich our fraud features. So the more transactions we have going through our system, the more the problematic transactions we can see, and we can help you avoid those problematic transactions before they even happen. So before they come a chargeback, we can warn you ahead of time that, hey, we've seen the same card used in China. It doesn't make sense that it's being used in the US right now. Are you sure you want to proceed with that transaction because it could be fraudulent? That kind of example comes from having this global reach that we have currently.
Yeah, and one of the things I think is really helpful from Scott's experience and perspective, he's been with Nuvei 20 years. He's been working with direct selling merchants throughout that time, and he's seen this global footprint expand and expand and expand, so that what he can bring to you as a merchant is so much more expansive than what it was 5 or 10 years ago. So it's an exciting time for us. Question from the chat: does Nuvei support Union Pay? The answer is yes for U.S. merchants. I don't know, Scott, if you have any additional detail to provide on the Union Pay capability.
I saw the chat really quickly. It was specific to Union Pay debit, and Union Pay debit
I'm sorry.
is being rolled out. So Union Pay rides on the JCB rails for credit. Union Pay debit is being rolled out in Q4, so it's happening right now along with Alipay and WeChat Pay. That has been an initiative of ours, is to catch up. So if you're currently incorporated in Europe or anywhere else in the world other than the US, it is working 100%. If you're incorporated in the US and working out of the US, those 3 payment methods are on the roadmap for this quarter of this year.
Yeah,
it's been mandated by the higher ups in our company.
Yeah, my apologies. I just saw the truncated text. It just said Union Pay, so I didn't realize it said Union Pay debit. So good clarification there.
Yeah.
Okay, Cassie, I think we have all we want on this slide. We can proceed to the next, please.
Perfect. Yeah, and I just want to chime in here. That's a great example of their expertise. I personally shoot them questions on a weekly basis. Hey, do you support this kind of currency or this type of payment method in this region? So they are a wealth of knowledge. So beyond just understanding that Nuvei has this global presence, that they've been in business for 20 years, that they've got all these great relationships. These two individuals also have a wealth of knowledge. And, I want to make sure that everybody really appreciates not just Nuvei, the company, but our partners specifically and the experience that they bring. Because I think like I said, on a weekly basis, we're talking about what are the next new APMs that we need to launch? Where are the regions that we're looking at? And that all comes from our clients as well. As I'm talking with clients and understanding where you're planning to expand, I can get ahead of that, work with Nuvei. They can get it on their roadmap so that you're going to be covered by the time you get there. All right. So shifting gears just a little bit, we're going to talk about some of the configurations that are possible in ByDesign, going back to that flexibility, right? And when it comes to payment configurations specifically, whew, that was hard. Talking about those specifically, there's a lot of flexibility here, and I want you to understand what's possible. Okay, so first and foremost, you can configure payments by interface. So you can actually have a different payment configuration for enrollment versus cart, or freedom back office versus cart. What this means is that you can choose what makes the most sense for the audience that's going to be using that page. Maybe in cart, that's where you want to have the most APMs available because that's where your customers are checking out, and that's where you want them to be able to access all of those. But in your freedom back office, you don't necessarily need all of those, right? You can limit it in that way. You can also leverage this flexibility for a phased rollout. We have a lot of clients that have chosen to do this as they're migrating over to Nuvei. They'll start by accepting those Nuvei payments in freedom and maybe enrollment, and then move to cart, or they might start with cart and then go to enrollment. So the key here is to understand that while you can certainly flip the switch and make everything move at once, you can also do it in a more phased approach and in a more cautious approach, if you will. Another thing I like to mention here is we do have another partner in FlexPay. They handle auto ship retry processing, and that works in conjunction with Nuvei and ByDesign. So if you're using, if you are interested in capturing and protecting more of your recurring payments, so those that get declined when you run auto ship, FlexPay is an integration that can retry those payments, leveraging the Nuvei platform and the ByDesign system. So just know that that's also an option there. But in addition to interface, you can also configure it by territory or location. We have a lot of clients that do this. They may start with the EU market, and then, a few months later, they then turn their focus on LATAM or Asia. But again, the key is the flexibility here. Most often what I find when it comes to location is, you may be waiting on one of those roadmap items. So the Union Pay debit card that's coming out late Q4, early Q1. That doesn't mean you need to wait until Q1 to start migrating some of your business over. You can start in those regions where that's not a required payment method, start getting used to the Nuvei interface, start, realizing some of the cost savings, some of the advantages and value that come along with Nuvei. And then in Q1, once that alternative payment method becomes available, then you can turn it on in that specific region. You can also configure different payment methods for the different regions. So you may have a particular APM that only makes sense in China. So you're going to turn it on in China, but you're not necessarily going to offer it to your EU or your US areas. This is all configuration that is possible between ByDesign and Nuvei. Some of these configurations are in the ByDesign system, some of them are in the Nuvei system, but the key is that you have that flexibility to really do what makes the most sense for your business and for your customers worldwide. And then I already hit on this with the credit card processing and APMs. You can turn on different ones in different countries, and so on. In short, we just want to make it easy for people to join and sell and let customers pay how they want to pay. That is really the key to success here, is meet them where they're already at. It's the same thing with communications as with payments. Go where they're already at. If you know that your customers are already using a particular payment method in a region, let's make sure that you have access to accept that payment method in that region, whether it's on cart, on enrollment, or anywhere else. So the payment configurations are really going to be key. And this is one of those real benefits to having the experts like Scott, like myself, be able to help you with the configuration, because we can recommend some of those top methods by region. I know Scott and Marlon both are very familiar with worldwide payments. They know what the latest trend is in Europe. They know which Cash App is growing in the US. Where can you accept this particular one in Asia? They have all of that expertise. So collectively, we can help work with you and collaborate and guide you to the best experience. All right. Next, I'm going to hand it back over to Scott and Marlon. I don't know which one of you want to talk licenses.
Scott's up on this one.
Yeah, I'll speak on this. So this is a kind of a wordy worldwide graph, and it's kind of a continuation of what I was discussing earlier. So when I started with Nuvei, the only country that we truly had a license in was, believe it or not even Canada, it was the US. So we started in the US, grew into Canada after 4 or 5 years, and then we did have capabilities to connect to other processors around the world. But that really starts losing control, losing the right to board the kind of merchants we want. It really takes away from the one integration for a world of opportunity like we're looking for. So we slowly but surely started adding the pieces we need to get the key markets. So these are the markets where we currently have direct licenses with Visa, MasterCard, which means we don't have to work through, other than the US, because US it's its own world when it comes to processing. Other than the US, we work directly with Visa and MasterCard. So there is no need for a secondary approval from another party. In these regions, it is truly Nuvei who you're working with. Everywhere else in the world where we do business, we need to partner up with another company, someone like a PPRO or a PayU in some of the regions in Latam where we can't reach. And I could go on ad nauseum with all the different partnerships we have, but we do need to have those partnerships for clients that do want to work outside these regions where we have our licenses. The very good thing is we have 3 or 4 more licenses coming up per year going forward. So we are slowly but surely growing our overall footprint to really emulate where our clients need to be and want to be. These decisions are made primarily, it's based on the economic regions we're going into. So I know that right now, Colombia, we have an office. Well, we're breaking into Brazil, that monster beside it. We're breaking into India soon enough. We already have Mexico. So wherever the big economic regions are, that is where we want to be. There's details as to which license we have under each of those offices. Not really important, you know it. The importance is that we are legal and we are allowed handling money on your behalf in any of those regions. You'll notice some of the tiny little regions we have where you can hardly see the red specks. So Singapore and Hong Kong, those are very strategic it's strategic in our minds, because Singapore is kind of the gateway to the east. Hong Kong is very tough for a lot of merchants to break into. So we've kind of gone ahead and done that work for you, so you can use us and really expand your breadth. So people from Singapore are working in Vietnam, Malaysia, all over the Southeast, and Hong Kong is a gateway into China.
Perfect. And before we jump to the next slide, I just want to chime in. I've personally seen this grow even just in the last 2 years that we've been working together. It's been really nice to see that global expansion that Nuvei has had. And I also want to make sure everyone understands, just because there's not a license and a little red area in the markets that you're selling in doesn't mean you can't use Nuvei there. It just means that Nuvei is going to be partnering with someone to get access to that area. So they can really cover worldwide payments. It's just in these areas, and some of them have just recently become available, it's more direct, right? And you're going to be working directly with Nuvei, which usually means cost savings for you, faster turnarounds, that sort of thing. So, for example, some of these that we have branched out to in the last year, we've had clients that were already operating in those areas. And then what we were able to do is just update the way that they were processing payments in those areas, to make it more streamlined for them. So you don't have to wait until they're licensed in that area to be able to do business there. So just want to make sure that's really clear to everybody, because I've personally seen a lot of existing clients who are already operating globally. And then as soon as Nuvei gets licensed in that area, we just work to update your integration there, to make the most of that license.
Absolutely correct. And anywhere we do business, it's all done through our one gateway. So even if we're having to use another provider in an area that we are not licensed in, we are actually still connecting through that one gateway to which ByDesign is integrated. So that still means you're not having to get a second integration. Is there more parties involved? Absolutely, but slowly but surely we're reducing the amount of parties we need to get to the key areas. And within a couple of years, there's going to be more red on this map than gray.
Perfect.
Any questions pertaining to this slide?
Yeah, what's the deal with Alaska? Why isn't it red and why doesn't it say 50 states?
Yeah, that's probably done by a Canadian person in our marketing team. That's probably why. We definitely do process for Alaska. I just have to chalk that up to someone who's not great with a map.
Yeah.
It even says 49 states, not 50 states.
You know what? I think Hawaii might not be included, but Alaska certainly is.
Okay, so y'all, okay.
Yeah, Alaska is certainly fine. I think there is a separate need and money movement license needed for Hawaii, as is Puerto Rico.
Okay, all right. Just curious.
No worries. No worries.
Elise
Any other
is our
questions that I can't
detail.
answer adequately for this one?
Yeah, Elise is our detail finder. She always finds the little details for us. I love it.
I'm gonna bring this up to my marketing team.
Yeah.
Well,
A number of
I
our
just know
marketing-
we have people in Alaska, and I'm like, wait, did we lose them?
All right, perfect. We're going to go on to the next slide, which I think is still going to be Scott.
So 3DS is something that a lot of people know they kind of know what it means, but they really don't understand the flow and how it can impact you. So I'm just going to go over some key features of 3DS. 3DS, when it first started, it was very clunky and very few people adopted it. It basically necessitated every single person have a password on their cards, which they quickly forgot. And the only people that adopted it off the bat were airlines because they had future deliverables and high ticket items. And it was basically dropped after that. In Europe, 3DS 2 has become the norm. 3DS 2 still does have the ability to challenge a transaction, but for the most part, so for the other, say, 85 to 90% of transactions, there is no challenge required. And so basically, they're looking at data points, and data points can include regular buying habits, the IP address from which you're shopping, the device from which you're shopping on, the country that your card was issued in compared to the country that your card is being used in. So it's basically taking 30 or 40 different data points, depending on where you're shopping from, and deciding whether that needs a challenge. A challenge is basically a window that'll pop up saying, please authenticate by your cell phone that we have on record that you are who you say you are. They send a code and you enter the code. So it's two-factor authentication. But for the remaining cards, so if you're shopping from home with your regular credit card and you're buying something that you purchased kind of something similar in the past, it should be frictionless, no challenge necessary. If you're outside the norm, let's call it, then there will be a challenge. There's a couple of benefits for this. The first one is greatly reduced chances of fraud. And more importantly is the benefit chargeback liability shift. So if you take part in 3DS 2 specifically, and the person wants to charge back and say it wasn't them, the chargeback does not fall on you, the merchant, any longer. The chargeback actually gets reverted to the issuer. So the issuer is saying that, yes, we trust this person. Rick Gray went ahead and made this purchase, and 3DS was applied. This transaction was approved by us. They can't come back and say, no, this wasn't us. That liability has been shifted, so that chargeback will never hit your front door. It will go directly to the issuer of that card, and they are hit with the fines and the fees. So that's a massive advantage, and that's the reason why approval ratios and chargeback ratios, approval ratios go up when you're using 3DS in Europe, approval rate and chargeback ratios go down. Now, in the US, slowly but surely, 3DS is being adopted. It is not complete. Whereas in Europe, it's mandatory to run 3DS transactions. So if you're a European entity selling from Europe into Europe, you are mandated to use 3DS. If you're a US entity selling from the US into Europe, you're not mandated, but it is highly recommended that you go through that 3DS flow, because people in Europe, cardholders, are used to being challenged once in a blue moon. And just being a US entity selling into Europe, you are going to see more issues, because if the person's never bought something from US before, right away they're going to set off some alarms. The bank is going to wonder why they're outside of their normal spending habits. So this is when that liability shift in 3DS really come in handy, is when you're starting to sell from the US into Europe. But ideally, if you have a large presence in Europe, you want to get yourself an incorporation in Europe and run your transactions from a proper flow. So I didn't really follow the order in which these benefits were listed. I just kind of went all over the map based on knowledge. Any questions on this, on 3DS and how it can impact your business and when to use it, when not to use anything on 3DS? So my wacky way of talking kind of settled it all out. Perfect.
Yeah.
Hard to follow, but I got all the information out.
That's right. And just to clarify, Scott, the 3DS challenging for EU, that's worked into our auto ship integration as well. So we're confirming that 3DS on the initial payment so that recurring payments are known, already 3DS authorized, and then it's not going to be challenged in the future, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I should have mentioned that. So I didn't cover everything. It is, so once you go through 3DS Secure, let's say when you enroll, you go through your 3DS, the next time that card is used, there's no 3DS requirements on there, because there's a 3DS indicator that shows that we've gone through the rigors, checked the card, made sure it is a valid card from a valid person shopping in a valid manner. And if you've been challenged, that challenge will have followed that transaction string along. And the next time that card is charged for something like an auto ship or even a merchant initiated billing, or the next time the person goes into the back office and chooses it, it will automatically go through, won't have to go through a 3DS check again, because it has already been verified. And that verification follows that transaction around for the entire time that token will be used going forward.
And that brings us back again to the benefit of tokenization.
Absolutely. Good callback.
All right. Okay, so next up, I wanted to just, I feel like maybe I'm really driving this home more than I need to, but again, with the flexibility. So I wanted to pull up some specific integrations that are already done, and examples of how clients are leveraging Nuvei plus ByDesign in the different geographic areas. So the first one is a very straightforward integration. This client is using Nuvei plus ByDesign and FlexPay so that they can get those recaptured auto ships that might decline. And they're offering credit card and PayPal as their APMs there.
Yes.
If they choose to add a new APM, it's very simple. They can just work with Nuvei to configure that and activate it. But they're basically using this Nuvei and ByDesign connection on all of their businesses worldwide. The second one, an example, is a client that is using Nuvei plus ByDesign in the EU and in North America, but they currently have an alternative processor for LATAM or Latin America. That is something that we see a lot as a phased approach. Maybe we'll start by turning on US and EU and then do LATAM down the road, or vice versa. It may also be a situation where this client has a specific direct relationship with a processor in LATAM, or there may be some specific reason they need to continue using that processor in specific countries there. But all of that is possible and configurable in our system. The third one, We've got a client that is leveraging Nuvei API for enrollment. So they have a custom enrollment form. They're not using the ByDesign one, but they're still able to use Nuvei for the payments, even with that custom form, because they're using the ByDesign checkout. So they've made their own enrollment form. They're having the enrollee, that new rep, fill out everything on their side. Then they land in the ByDesign cart for checking out. And because they're landing in our cart, they can leverage Nuvei credit card processing, bank draft, or any of the other APMs. And then finally, the last example here is a client that has Nuvei and ByDesign EU on a separate mid than the Nuvei and ByDesign US. So this means that they are using the combination of Nuvei and ByDesign in both areas. But because of the benefits of processing directly into those regions, they've chosen to actually carry two separate mids, or two accounts, if you will. I'm gonna, probably wrong word, sorry, Scott. But they have two separate accounts set up on the Nuvei side. One is for EU processing and one is for the US processing. But both of them are leveraging the integration that we carry with ByDesign, and both are able to offer both credit card and APMs. Okay, it's just that they have the two separate accounts that they're using for US and EU. And I'd love for Scott to talk a little bit about why a client might choose to do that.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, there's a couple of reasons. The most important is buyer experience. People want to pay in their own currencies, and they want to see the exact amount that they're paying on their actual credit card invoice. So there are multiple ways to sell around the world. From the US, you can sell to any region of the world you want. And you can use multi-currency processing, which is available. And you can charge people. So from a US mid, you can charge people in euro. But ultimately, when they see the price of the cost of the item in euro, they're going to be paying something a little bit different by the time it gets to their invoice. That is because anytime money moves across a border, someone's hitting it with FX. So if they're paying in USD, they are going to be hit with an FX fee. If they're paying in euro and you're using a multi-currency processing method, you, the merchant, are going to be hit with an FX fee. More often than not, what merchants do is increase the price mildly to reflect what the client would be paying anyways, but there's still going to be a cross-border fee that is a separate line item. If you use a local entity, and the Eurozone is great because you cover 30 countries with one integration. If you're using a local entity, being local anywhere in Europe, you are getting better rates, you are getting better approval ratios, plus your cardholder is getting the best customer experience because they're paying the exact amount they think they're going to pay with no FX fees, no surprises at the end. It also makes refunding much easier. So if you have to refund someone, you don't have to go retroactively and look at what the exchange rate was that day. You're refunding the exact amount they paid, and they're getting their currencies in that amount. Second massive advantage is approval ratios. So as I talked about a little bit before, when you are shopping outside of your normal shopping area, there is a higher risk that a transaction is declined from the issuer. If this is the first time you've ever bought something online outside of the UK and you're based in the UK, you can get a false decline. It might require that you call your issuer and explain to them that you do want this transaction to take place. That's kind of annoying. It's not a great shopping experience, and you'll get cart abandonment. The other big advantage so your approval ratios should go up if you're selling from the US into Europe. Your approval ratios are probably going to be in words of 70 to 75% because there are just going to be a lot of declines. That will shoot up to probably 80 to 90% if you're selling from in-country. And then if we start tweaking your fraud rules, you can get that up to the 95%, which is kind of a sweet zone, but you'll never get there if you're selling from out of country into another country. The final massive and I think huge example of savings is going to be advantage, sorry, not savings, is going to be the alternative payment methods that you were given access to. So from the US, you can have alternative payments, but you can't have all. So if you're selling from the US into Europe, you can still use SEPA, but you're not going to be use Ideal, SOFR, and GiroPay. right? And those are ones in the Netherlands, ones in Germany, and ones in the Austro-Hungarian area. So Germany, and in and around there. You also need carte bancaire if you're selling into France. So if you're in Europe, you automatically have access to all of these other payment methods, and that will also make the whole process smoother. Now, if you are in Europe and you're selling to a country that doesn't have a certain alternative payment, so let's say you're selling into the Netherlands, and the Netherlands never uses carte bancaire. Well, that wouldn't even show up as a card that's available to pay in. They would only show your SEPA, if you're choosing to use SEPA, Ideal, and your Google Pay, Apple Pay, and your cards. It's not going to show cards that are not available to you based on where your card was issued. So there's a multitude of advantages to using in-country incorporations to sell in-country. There is a price associated with going local, and that is you have to abide by the Visa MasterCard location guidelines, which means you need an office, you need a utility bill, you need a member or an employee there that makes decisions. And all of these things need to be verified. So that is a bit of a sticky process, but once you go through that process, your life and your client's life will become a little easier and smoother. Any questions specific to client examples? Right on.
All right, awesome. All right, so in addition to all of the value and the benefits that we've talked about when it comes to approval rates and, offering those different payment methods and whatnot, there's also some advantages on the ByDesign side that I want to talk about. And the first and foremost is Checkout 2.0. So Checkout 2.0 is the latest version of our checkout flow. And currently, Nuvei is the only payment processor that we have that is written and integrated into Checkout 2.0. So therefore, for our mutual clients, this is one of the advantages that you get to realize. But for those of you who have not seen anything on Checkout 2.0, what you're seeing on the screen here on the left-hand side is our Checkout 1.0 or 1.5. So this is kind of a stair-step approach. So the customer lands at checkout. First step is to verify the address and then proceed to the next page. Then you're gonna look at promotions and evaluate those. Proceed to the next page. Then you're going to get to where you can actually get to payment. So the customer is having to click through multiple pages there. Versus Checkout 2.0, we've taken all of those items, put them into one single page. So fewer clicks means fewer abandoned carts. We all know that. But by also putting it all into one page, we're basically helping the customer by not asking them to repeat information. If we already have an address for you, we're not going to ask you for a new one. We're going to assume it's the same, right? That it hasn't changed. You can change it if you want, but we're going to assume that you don't need to. That's just one of the examples. So we're reducing the clicks. This is also a page that is written mobile first because we know shopping is primarily done from mobile devices. Okay, so the new page is formatted to display on mobile devices. And my personal favorite feature of Checkout 2.0 is when you're on the mobile device, if you can see here my screenshot that has the little phone there, at the bottom, it has an order total with the green button to pay. No matter where I scroll on this page, that proceed to payment is sticky. Okay, so it's always going to be there. As a customer, I don't have to search for the next step. It's right there in my face. No matter where I scroll on this page, I can clearly see where I can click to proceed and submit that payment. So we've made it a lot easier. We've streamlined it, and we've seen customers really respond to that. We have fewer abandoned carts, more conversions, and really they're just getting to the payment a lot faster, right? So that's some of the benefits of Checkout 2.0. And this is one that we've hit a number of times on the call today, but APMs, alternative payment methods. I've provided a link here to the page where Nuvei has all of their APMs listed out. You can filter by country, filter by type, really look at what they have on this page so that you can learn what customers are going to expect in certain regions. You can understand what the major payment methods are for any area. And then you can see here exactly what the customer is going to see. As they're going through the checkout, any of the payment methods that you have activated are going to be presented to them. So as a customer, I can choose, do I want to use PayPal? Do I want to use Afterpay? Do I want to use a credit card? They're all there, very easy. You can see we bring in the logos of the payment methods themselves so that the customer recognizes it and they feel familiar with the payment methods that are available. So it's already integrated seamlessly into Checkout 2.0. If you're already leveraging Nuvei, but you're not leveraging APMs, set up some time with me so that we can talk about it and we can start turning on more of these. If you're considering a migration to Nuvei, you can either choose which ones of these you want to launch with initially, or you can start by just replacing one-to-one with your credit card processing and then add these APMs at a later date. But APMs are very critical in making customers feel safe and secure. And honestly, it's like I said before, if I have to get up and go find my card, I'm not checking out. So APMs are a reason for this customer to do business on your site. In addition to the APMs, one of the things that we really love is the partnership and the people that Nuvei offers. All of our clients that are mutual between ByDesign and Nuvei have a dedicated account manager who can help you when you're ready to turn on those APMs or if you've got questions. But this slide really shows the value of the customer support that Nuvei offers. Marlon, Scott, anything you'd like to add on this one?
Yeah, we have distributed teams that have expertise across the range of the payments mix, and so we can bring that to bear in terms of supporting you as a direct selling merchant, whether it's APM knowledge, with dedicated relationship manager to help in the post-sale implementation. If issues come back in terms of chargeback or fraud, we have people that specialize in that. So, we work with some of the largest merchants in the world, and we can take that kind of expertise and bring it to all of you as well. So that's, I think, a helpful value proposition. One item I don't want us to forget before we close for today's session is to come back to the payouts question that Bart had. We work with Visa Direct, MasterCard Send, and other mechanisms to enable commission payouts. I'll turn it over to Scott to provide a little more perspective on the payout solutions that we offer.
Great. And I'm just going to touch on the slide before. As much as Marlon and I know, our worldwide processing capabilities and the scope of payments, we certainly don't come close to knowing it all. I can talk a good game and pretend I do, but the reality is I rely on the people around me to give me a lot of the information. And it's if you think you know it all, you're about to be surprised tomorrow because you've just learned something new. This world is constantly evolving. So having the support from an entire team and having the breadth of knowledge that we have on a worldwide basis gives me the ability to talk confidently about payments in Singapore. When 3 weeks ago, I didn't know anything, and now I've kind of really got a good base to get myself in trouble. So we can go on to payouts. So right now, payout capabilities and commission for this conversation, we'll call them commission payments, is something that we have the ability to do around the world. And there's basically any way we can collect money, almost any, we can pay out in that payment type. So in the US, for example, people pay with Visa and MasterCard. If they have a Visa debit or a MasterCard debit, we can pay directly into their bank accounts. So this is an instant transaction that goes directly into a person's bank account. Some banks are participating in Visa credit and MasterCard credit cards to be able to deposit onto their cards. But for the most part right now in the US, it's into your Visa debit account, which is associated with your bank account, or your MasterCard debit. Most cards are now issued with dual logos. Same thing in Canada. Visa, MasterCard have Interact logos on them, which connect directly to your bank account. We can also pay out via ACH. ACH Direct or real-time payments. And there's a Cash App, which I am not familiar with yet because it is a US only, but I do know that the Cash App is something we can pay onto as well. When you start getting across the world, bank-to-bank payment methods are more popular. People like to be able to be issued a card, which gets a little bit expensive, but we do have that kind of capabilities. Now, being said, all of these payout capabilities are available. Not all of them are integrated with the ByDesign infrastructure yet. It is something that's being worked on, and there are people probably in this digital room that have heard me say that in the past. It is a much heavier lift than we anticipated. And because our primary focus has been getting people live and tokenized to get them out of the scope of needing to get their own PCI compliance level D, we are working hard at getting everyone live, and the payout portion has taken a bit of a back seat. That will not remain that way. It is a focus for us on the roadmap early 2025. And
Right.
Dan or Cassie, keep me honest here. I could have made up that whole thing, but that's what I'm giving. Yeah,
Nope.
we're getting nods. We're getting nods.
That's
Right.
accurate. Yep, it is something tokenization has taken front and center, and also expanding additional APMs, making sure you can use those APMs on enrollment, on auto ship. Those are all things that we've shifted our focus to make sure that we can really meet the needs of all of our clients. So that has been the focus, but we have done some of the work on that rep bonus payout. So we have done some of the foundational work to be able to leverage Nuvei as a payout for your commissions. I think honestly, in early 2025 in Q1, we're going to start looking for one or two clients that can help us start, testing things out and start actually leveraging it. I assume Bart's going to want to be one of those. So he and I can stay connected there. I'm your Huckleberry. I gotcha. I'll make sure that you're one of the first that we can work on there. But yeah, that should be coming out in early 2025. Before we wrap up, I do want to make sure we hit other questions that we've had. Bart was asking, when it comes to credit card errors and retries, what error should he be retrying?
So yeah, we have auto ships that we generate credit card declines. So we've got some of the errors. For example, obviously insufficient funds. That is a obvious error that we can retry because maybe he'll come back and we'll have errors on that. Number one question is what are the ramifications of doing a retry if it's insufficient funds? Are we getting dinged for a retry on that? Or is the cardholder getting dinged for a retry? So that's number one. Number two, we've got invalid service code, do not honor, and closed accounts. I'm assuming that those are error codes that we just forget the retries on those, because those aren't going to generate those aren't going to be successful no matter how many times we retry those. Am I correct in assuming that?
So yes and no, Bart. Decline error codes, it's not an exact science. So every single issuer has basically an equivalency, and what they send to us isn't necessarily exactly what the decline is. So insufficient funds, yes, that's a good one to retry. If it's not automated, aim for retrying on the following Friday or on the following 15th of the month. Try to time it when people get paid and pay their bills. So that's what I recommend. As far as do not honor, that is kind of that could be a card that is not honored, but it could have been an original transaction that took place on a stored value card. And stored value cards are one time only. So if you get a do not honor, there's a strong likelihood that that's a prepaid Visa that they used to buy an initial product. And then when you go to try to retry on that card, that's going to see that it's a recurring transaction because it'll have recurring indicators on there and will be automatically declined by the issuer of that card, and you will get a do not honor. That's it. That's their way of saying they don't honor that credit card transaction. In that case, you want to call up that rep if it's feasible. I mean, it's all economies of scale here. So if it's feasible to get a manual call in, give the rep a call, let them know that the card they're using isn't being accepted. It's probably because it's a stored value card, and then have them give you the other card information. Perhaps the system could be automated. I don't know if that's something that we can key in with ByDesign, because that could be a great idea that certain recodes, retries, we can actually notify if we get a decline reason code, do not honor, let the card holder know that that card is not being honored. They might have to change it. So I might have just created work for Cassie and team, but it's something that could feasibly be done.
I was actually just going to chime in and say that that would be a great message to include in the autoresponder that you have for declined cards. If you have an auto ship that's declined, the message that goes out to that card holder could include information. If you're attempting to use a prepaid card for recurring payments, we recommend not doing that. I mean, obviously make it sound a lot better than that, but definitely a message that you could include into that autoresponder template that's already going to go out to those card holders.
Great idea. And as far as some of the other reason codes, if you get something like pickup card, that's a fraudulent card. If you get the word fraudulent anywhere, do not retry it. And if you're having a lot of a decline issue, that's something you want to bring up with us directly, and we can look into why those cards are being declined. So we can do a deeper dive. It doesn't happen overnight, because we really have to look at the exact information that we received, what was passed on to the issuer, and why the issuer declined it, and then how we interpreted that decline and sent you the message. What they're never going to do is give you the exact recipe on how to get the card to go through. So they're never going to say, oh, by the way, the last digit was off by 1. Right? They're never going to get that precise. They keep it generic to stop fraud, but there is work we can do to help with declines if it is becoming a problem.
Yeah, the biggest tool we're getting is insufficient funds and closed account.
Those are self-explanatory. If the closed account, don't bother trying to get insufficient funds, try on a better time. So that really is aim for the 15th, the 30th, the 1st, or Fridays.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Great advice. Great advice. Do we have any other questions before we drop? I know we've covered everything that was in the chat, but anything verbally before we wrap up for the day? All right.
I can pile on for days if you need, so let me know.
I do want to thank everybody for taking the time today. A big thank you to Scott and Marlon for their wealth of information when it comes to payment processing worldwide. I know they have taught me more in the last 2 years than I ever thought I would want to know about payments. So thank you guys so much for taking the time. If you have any follow-up questions, or if you're interested in moving forward, visit our marketplace. It's got contact information there. You can fill out the form to request it, or contact me directly, or contact Scott and Marlon. There's lots of ways to get in touch with us. But I just wanted to thank everybody so much for your time today. As a reminder, I will be sending out both the deck and the recorder to everybody who was registered. So you can share it with others on your team, re-review it on your own, and take next steps as appropriate.
Can you include our contact information on that follow-up?
Absolutely, will do.
That'd be great.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Passing.